Alrighty, so before I begin, I would like you all to close your eyes. Imagine you are asleep. An alarm beeps, 5:15 a.m. Your eyes slowly open. The world is dark. The sun has not yet started to rise. You become aware of the rainforest waking up around you. You swipe a mosquito net aside as you slowly plant your feet on the ground, carefully looking for cockroaches before you do so. You stand up and search for the soggy box of matches next to the bed. After a few tries, you are able to light one and illuminate the candle on the nightstand. It rained yesterday, and the small solar-powered battery is out. As you get dressed in damp field clothes, the light from the sun slowly lessens the dark. You pick up your boots, one final check for spiders and any weird bugs that may have found a home in them at night. You slip your feet in, step onto the muddy ground, grab a banana for breakfast, pick up your machete near the kitchen door, and head into the woods. There's a little light on the trail as you walk. The little sky you can see through the tall canopy has started to lighten, but the rays of sunshine have not yet reached the forest floor. Your eyes strain, searching for a branch moving, ears hoping for the sound of rain falling from the leaves of a branch being swung on. You hope for the slightest indication that a monkey is close. You call out the woolly monkey's social call, and receive no answer. After an hour or so, your neck starts to hurt from looking up into the tall trees. Suddenly, you hear the familiar crash of a branch bending. Venga, venga, el mono está allá. You can open your eyes. Alrighty, so my name is Sophie Maloney, and I will be presenting on research that I did on woolly monkeys while in the Ecuadorian Amazon. So last year around this time actually, I was in Ecuador as part of an SIT conservation ecology program. And as part of the SIT program, all students who travel abroad with SIT do an independent research project. So they're independent study project. And my ISP was 1 month at the end of the program. And I was lucky enough to be one of 2 students selected to go to the Amazon. And I learned a lot of things with my time there. One of which I think is that our cultural factors very much influence, and our cultural background very much influences the way we interact with not only our environment, but the way we do research, science, the way science is created, and kind of the methodology we use. So I went to this different culture as a white, middle-class American college student woman. And very much was in a very completely different cultural context when I was there. So I saw myself less as the white college student going to discover things about monkeys, and more of someone using my education to translate thousands of, obviously not all of it, but thousands of years of indigenous knowledge through, I was working with 2 Quechua people. And I saw my job kind of as someone of a translator to translate at least a very small slice of that knowledge into kind of a Western scientific context. So a little bit about where I was. If you can see right here, this is Ecuador. It's in South America, and this is Quito, the main city. And just a little bit west of that is Coca, which is one of the last cities kind of on this part of the Amazon. So from Coca, I traveled with my research partner, Adrian, and I traveled down the Rio Napo for an hour to this small island. And the river is very large. Yeah. So a little bit about the organization that I was working with. It was called Sumac Alpa, and it was started about 7 years ago by a man named Hector Vargas. And 2 families live on the island. They run basically the whole business and a monkey rehabilitation program. So what that means, it's a little bit different than what Leah was just presenting on. It means that the monkeys on this island are meant to roam freely. They aren't enclosed other than the natural cage that the island provides. And the goal of the rehabilitation is to help monkeys that had previously been owned as pets or in captivity regain their kind of ability to live in the wild. The monkeys on the actual island will not be released into the wild, but their offspring eventually will be. So the island acts not only as a long-term primate rehabilitation center, but also a nature reserve. 70% of the island is primary forest, so there was really like a long history of this land being just primary forest, which is really important for rainforest ecosystems. The organization ran on tourism. That was their income source. So they had tour groups coming in almost every day, at least a few times a week. So they get money through that, and then through hosting students like myself, through stipends that are provided for them, as well as hosting other tourists for longer periods of time. So this is me and my research partner, Adrian. We were the 2 students from my program that were sent here, and this is where we lived. And that's kind of us in our field clothes. You can see our machetes behind us. Yeah. So a little bit about goals for this project. So our kind of scientific goals were to assess the woolly monkey diet, as well as provide Sumac Ulpa with kind of this resource, this scientific resource, which could help them potentially get funding, not only from the Ecuadorian government in the future, but from international organizations. And then, like I said kind of before, was translate that knowledge. So a little bit about woolly monkeys. They're about the size of my torso, not my legs. They're quite big primates, and they have these huge tails that they're able to grab on things with. They act as important seed dispersers in the ecosystem, which means they eat a bunch of fruit and then travel to a different location and then will poop the seeds out, and that kind of helps rainforest ecology and is really critical to many, many plant species. They're considered vulnerable on the IUNC Red List, which means that they are not quite endangered, but kind of endangered being endangered. And their habitat is quickly disappearing due to deforestation, mainly surrounding the oil industry, and habitat partitioning due to roads coming in and kind of infrastructure being brought to the Amazon to exploit the resources there, as well as overhunting, mainly by indigenous populations that have been reduced into smaller areas of land. And because they don't have as large expanses of land, they have to overhunt the small land that they have. So my hypothesis is that ecological resources available to rainforest primates are more limited in fragmented ecosystems such as islands than in expansive areas of primary forest. Prediction, therefore, is the woolly monkeys on Sumac Ulpa Island have a less diverse diet and use different resources than in broader expanses of mainland primary forest. A little bit about my methods. So we were given 2 Xerox copies of this map. One, fortunately, was not moldy, and we were able to use it and divide the island up into sections. This helped us in our notation and helped us kind of like find our way around. So we slept and lived here and then would walk kind of these trails throughout the day to look for the monkeys. In order to find them and observe them, we observed them during common feeding hours, which were kind of 2 hours between about 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning and 2 and 4 in the afternoon. It gets very hot in the middle of the day, so they just kind of go to sleep. And so we were out there twice a day looking at them. So in addition to this map, we had to identify what plants they were eating and what fruits they were eating. And as someone who had just arrived and never been in a rainforest before this experience, that was quite a bit difficult in the beginning. We had help from Hector and another man on the island named Miguel, who took us around and kind of showed us as many plants as they could. From there, we would collect samples or reference plant guidebooks to help us identify the rest of the foods. So this is a little video. Is it gonna play? Huh? It did play before. That's unfortunate. Okay. That's all right. 'Cause 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 ' You know what? Actually, I'm just going to do it this way. Okay. So I took these videos while doing research. It's not the best quality, but it gives an introduction to the troupe that I was working with. This troupe consisted of 7 monkeys. They were all adults that had been on the island for at least 4 years. To observe foraging habits, we used 2 methods. The first was group survey method, where we looked at as many individuals as we could see and recorded what they were eating. The other method was focal animal sampling, in which we followed one individual monkey for 10 minutes and recorded what they ate. So we nicknamed some monkeys as we were working with them. So this is, he's gone. Yeah, there we go. That is the main male monkey. That is Big Red, and this one's Little Red. This one we called Big Mama. She is currently eating the fresh shoot off of a bromeliad. So she went and she ripped this leaf off a plant and then is perched on this branch, eating kind of the external parts, so the newer leaf tissue rather than the stem. And after this, she just kind of discards the stem and moves on. As woolly monkeys forage, they have a distinct kind of line that they move in as they're moving between food patches. So they have a hierarchy that goes with that. So Big Mama was the leader of that and started kind of by, like, she would be the one in the front and she had the most food resources because she would have access to the best food. So she was the largest, and then Big Red was the second largest. Little Red was like way further back in the line, and the male would take up the rear and kind of look over the whole troop as they ate. So that's that strong tail that they use just amazingly to travel through the trees. Alrighty. Oh, goodness. A little briefly about my experiences in the field. There were some challenges that came with doing this type of work and some really awesome advantages and exciting things. So the challenges were the language. Most of the research was done in Spanish, which was no one's primary language on the island. So the primary languages were either Quechua or German or English. So that was just interesting to navigate, and Hector spoke very good English, so that definitely assisted, but he really tried to speak with us in Spanish to help our own language proficiency. But I learned that you should not keep notes in 3 different languages because it's much more confusing later on. Another challenge was humidity and mold, and notes molding, clothes molding, etc. And then we didn't have internet. So doing research in a place with no internet and resources really accessible to you was definitely a new thing for me. And I learned kind of a lot from that. And then there were environmental limitations as well. There was a flood at one point. It rained for a day. And the island was submerged in water. And we couldn't do field work for 5 days as a result. So just kind of working with those very real things. But there was a lot of advantages too. Because this area did have a tourism business attached to it, they were very comfortable with white Americans. So I think that helped kind of the cultural exchange. And we, in some ways, were very much tourists there as well. There's a really large Quechua knowledge that these people who run the organization have, and that was wonderful. So without the internet, bad, but this knowledge was really great to have, so that was really our main resource. And then advantages, no internet and phone. It was awesome to not have that for a month. Fun with machetes, that is self-explanatory. And being surrounded by beauty and rare animals, like basically all the time was an incredible experience. And of course, working with Adrian, my research partner. So getting back into the research, this graph shows how frequently different plant families were eaten. So we calculated how many minutes they were foraging in these plants. And as you can see, Moraceae, this family right here, was clearly the winner. It's statistically significantly different than the other categories eaten, showing that they did have much more of a preference for these type of plants. This is the fig family. Here's one example of this. They ate this fruit 30% of the time, which was a huge percent of their diet. And it's called frutipon in Spanish, or breadfruit in English. And it's a big green spiky fruit. They ate different components of the plants, so we wanted to look at, how much fruit are they eating, how many flowers and shoots, et cetera. I did the study at a season of low fruit availability, meaning not that many fruiting trees actually had fruit on them. So during that time, they really have to look for alternative things in their diet. So these are, for example, this plant here, Capirona, they would eat the flowers of this. They would eat these new little leaf shoots. They wouldn't eat these big leaves, just this part of this plant. And this is a fig plant as well. And then this is an example of a fruit that they would eat. So we compared our study to similar studies done on woolly monkeys, just to kind of look at diversity and how the monkeys on the island were comparing to what had been found in the past. So this is the Shannon-Weaver Index, which compares diversity, and we found that our study had less diversity than previous ones. This is due to 3 factors, I believe. The first is that we were on an island, so the island ecosystem is different. It's kind of a partitioned ecosystem, meaning there's less broad expanse of forest. The second was simply the time frame of our study. We were there for a month. These other studies were there for 12 to 18 months. And so they obviously had a much larger time to observe them. And then the last, I think, is biased on the part of the researchers. As kind of inexperienced with rainforest ecosystems, I think we had a bias to pick out plants that we knew and record those rather than we could have misidentified plants in this process. One of the most interesting things I found was that there's more studies of drinking water than in any previous studies. So what that meant was in all of the other previous studies, there was no more than 2 incidences recorded with them drinking water. So those are 12 to 18 month long studies. Over a course of a month, we saw them drinking water 3 times, which I think kind of shows that they were not eating as many fruits, maybe with high water content in them, and having to supplement their diet by actually drinking water, which is pretty rare for woolly monkeys. And this shows a potential difference in the island ecosystem. In conclusion, the island ecosystem is less diverse, I think, than the mainland ecosystem. And that being said, I still think that the model of a rehabilitation centers on islands functions, because as long as the organization doesn't increase monkey populations above what the ecosystem can handle and carry and support with nutrition and stuff, I think that it's still a really operable model. But it should be looked at that they're not quite living in the same sort of ecosystem. So I also learned that students should set realistic expectations. And what I mean by that is, I think, examine themselves and their own positionality, as well as know what they and the organization they're working for are gonna get out of this. I got an incredible amount of this project. I learned so much. I don't know if I impacted necessarily the area I was in or the organization as much. And I think that's okay. And I think that is just important to kind of recognize and examine those factors of this as well. So future research that could potentially be done would be to complete a year-long study on this island and analyze the change in diet over different seasons. I think that we'd get a lot more information from that, as well as analyzing fecal samples from the monkeys for nutrition and knowing if not only are they getting enough food, but is that the right type of food and keeping them healthy. So some acknowledgements: Adrian, my research partner, Hector, Yafa Grossman for helping me with my manuscript in this presentation, and yeah, people in Ecuador in here. So questions? Thank you very much.
as is our practice, let's call on students first.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the ways you analyzed your data was by comparing it to previous studies on the monkeys. Were those studies also conducted in similar ecosystems, like centered in an island?
Yeah, so sorry, I should have made this clear. So those studies were done in areas around this. Some were done in Peru, some in Colombia, in very similar rainforest ecosystems where specifically Logothrix popoegi, the type of woolly monkey, lives. And they were not done on islands. They were done in broad expanses of primary forest. One of them, the top one, here I can go back to this slide. This De Fiori study was done actually just a 20-minute canoe ride down the river from where I was in Yasuni National Park. So it was really close by, and so that was the one I kind of looked at most because it would have the most similar ecosystem to the one I was working in. Yeah.
You and I have talked a little bit about this before, but I was hoping you could go a little bit more into the translation of research that you were doing on the island, and either trying to translate not only the language but the information into Spanish, and then your experience coming back to Beloit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so I think there's kind of the scientific research, and I think that I became very aware that I just view ecosystems very differently than they did. And I come from kind of this Western context in which we view nature as something that humans should shape and form, and we look at time linearly. We look at progression and things moving forward. So as we kind of go, as we learn about ecosystems, we carry that with us. So I became very apparent to me that the way I kind of viewed the whole ecosystem was that, and that with that human kind of imposition on it. So I just kind of kept that in mind, and yeah, so I think that just kind of wove its way into the science as well. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
In your video, there was whistling. Do you guys whistle at the monkeys, or is that?
Yeah. So Amelia's question was, in the video there was whistling. Do we whistle at the monkeys? Yeah. There's a woolly monkey social call. I did it right at the beginning, but it's just a little kind of chirp. I can do it softly. I never was able to master it to be loud enough to be heard over the other rainforest sounds. But that's their little that's kind of they're oh hey, what's up? And then they had another one that was more scary, screechy, growly sound. But yeah.
You would do it to communicate?
Yeah. So that, if done successfully, which I think we did one time, they'll hear it and they'll think it's another woolly monkey. So they'll call back. So you kind of have a call and response, and then you can find them without them moving. But most of the time we found them just by the fact that they would move through the trees and rustle branches. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How large was the island that you were on, and what was the process to become more how did you prepare to go to the island?
Yeah, so the question was how large was the island and how did I prepare to go to it? So I think it was quite a small island. It was about a 1.5 miles by 800 meters. So in an afternoon, you could kind of walk around the whole island pretty easily, which was awesome because I think that helped us find the monkeys more easily, and we could actually find them and interact with them. But to prepare for that experience, it was definitely scary to be I'm going to the Amazon. I don't know what bugs and or diseases and or anything is there. But we just we talked to my advisor of the project, Hector, who I mentioned before we went, and got field clothes and boots, and yeah.
You can talk a little bit about what the SIT program included, because that's part of the preparation.
Yeah. So the comment was to talk about kind of my broader SIT program. So I was part of this conservation ecology program, so we had been touring around Ecuador as kind of a group of 18 students looking at different ecosystems. So we'd been doing that for about 3 months, and we'd been to the mountains. We'd actually been to the Amazon once before, so I had been to the Amazon for a week before I actually went to the island, which was really nice just to have kind of an introduction to it. Are we, okay.
So, I was curious with the map that you showed, that there were different, they had sectioned out like different areas of the island. Did that play into your research at all, like comparing the different parts, or is that just a map to show you guys around?
Yeah, so the question was about the map and if we kind of used the different sections in our research, or if it was just a guide. So I didn't include it in this presentation, but we did actually map out where they ate different plant species. So we had all those species on a map, and you could see that there was some clear kind of like sections that they really liked that had a lot of fruit available. And so those sections where there was one right here, this is where they slept as well. So most mornings we would walk from here and try and catch them right as they woke up at about 6:30. And so they would start kind of feeding here, and they'd generally follow over here in the morning to this kind of section in 2.2, kind of through this section. And then in the afternoon, they often ate at a fruit patch kind of right here. And that was where the breadfruit was, that 30% of their diet. They got kind of, I think they got kind of lazy in the afternoon, and were like, it's hot, I just want easy, giant, good fruit.
Well, that's an excellent note to begin on. End on giant good fruit. Let's thank for Sophie. And then I'd like to thank all of the speakers in this session.